Right, guys. So, yeah, what I'll do, I'll just go through some of the main biomechanical issues that you might come across with different biotrends, and more so the common injuries that you might see, and just things to look out for from an exercise science and biomechanics point of view when you're working and training with the different biotrends. So, if we start off with the ecto, with the sensor, obviously one of the biggest things we're looking at is biomechanically, your sensors have got longer levers. And really light bones and a smaller amount of muscle mass. So if you think about the way the body's designed, and when you're looking at body structures, you can always tell that, as Cam's probably said before, the skeletal structure kind of gives you a clue, and the way the body's formed gives you a clue as to where people's strengths and weaknesses are going to be in it. And when you start looking at biotrends, you can really start to notice that. So when you have a body that has long levers, what you'll find is obviously longer levers, depending on the sport and the activity, but more often than not, especially when weight's involved, a longer lever will give a biomechanical disadvantage to moving large amounts of weight. And especially like if you think of certain sports like your shot put and things like that, where you're going to need shorter levers and a little bit more muscle mass to be able to move the shot put over large distances. So with your sensors, what you'll find is naturally they're not built to lift heavy weights. Because they do have longer levers and because they've got a smaller amount of muscle mass, heavyweight training, so working at that 85% of one rep max and working within that strength zone is probably not. It's not a case of they can't do it. Like I'm a firm believer of everyone can train in every way, but when you're talking about looking at the way a body's designed and structured, and let's say not teaching fish to climb trees and making sure we're working through our strengths, it's better to reduce the amount of load that we put through a sensor's body, through an ectomorph's body, and reduce the intensity in which we're lifting from a percentage of one rep max point of view. Just because they do have those longer levers, they do have lighter muscle and lighter bones in general. It's just going to put a lot more stress on the joints compared to a mesomorph, for example, who's got shorter levers, and even an endomorph who's got large amounts of muscle and shorter levers in general too. So big things there are just reducing the load, probably going for more volume, more muscular endurance range. So like your 12 to 15 reps, and working with lighter loads and then building up gradually from there. Obviously, if you've got a well-trained sensor, they could move into a little bit of strength training. But again, my advice would be not to spend too much time in that range, because it's just putting unneeded stress on the joints and the body of that person. Second thing with sensors would be to obviously watch out for the spine. With a lighter body and lighter mass in general, the spine obviously is quite sensitive. They've got a sensitive nervous system. So things like overhead pressing, again, should be taken with caution. So I'd say if you're going to do any overhead pressing, you keep it more in the sagittal plane rather than in the frontal plane. So you'd be pressing from this position here. And again, very light weights, if not reducing overhead weight training in general, like not using large amounts of it, again, just because if you've got a body that is not designed to be picking up heavy weight, and then you've got this really sensitive spine and not a lot of protection around the body, overhead pressing is going to create a sheer amount of force through the body in general, and they're going to feel a little bit more. So I'd say they're the biggest things from an exercise side of things to watch out for. And then, as Cam's probably mentioned in the past, with your sensors, yes, they're going to be lighter. Yes, they're not going to have as much body mass in general. So a few of them may want to bulk up. It is going to be harder for these guys to bulk up. It doesn't mean that you can't put them through weight training programs. It's just that you want to start. With high volume, with your high endurance reps, and then use your progressive overload techniques to slowly build them into the more hypertrophy ranges and things like that. But again, just exercising caution with the types of lift you use, and really making sure technique is good, making sure the joints are in a good position, the stability through the joints. We're in our neutral spine positions for our bent over rows and our deadlifts and things like that. And just taking a lot more extra caution around lifting mechanics, especially early on, would be the biggest things I'd say there. Things that they're going to thrive on is obviously exercises that are going to involve using balancing out the nervous system a little bit more and reducing stress on the nervous system. So things like yoga is going to be quite good for that spatial awareness, for the proprioception. It's also going to be great for stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system, which is going to help them dial down a little bit more, especially after a big day of being around lots of stimulus. You've got a body that's quite active in the sympathetic nervous system. So using exercises that require a bit more spatial orientation, a bit more proprioception coordination, and exercises that will switch on right brain rather than left brain are going to be really good to help balance this person from a neurological standpoint too. So I'd say they're the major considerations exercise-wise with your sensor.